a day is okay, but if they book it out 2 days, a week, 3 days, something like that, the chances of me even getting the opportunity to go out there goes in half. They usually cancel. Or if I do go out there, there's all kinds of objections that come up that weren't initially there when the technician was there on the site. So,
welcome to the Waste No Day podcast, a podcast specifically for and about the home services industry as it relates to plumbing, heating, air conditioning, and electrical. More than a podcast, Waste No Day is a credo, a determination, a mindset. It is a never-ending discipline. It is a refuse to lose pursuit. It is a wake-up call every morning to waste no day. Now here's your hosts, Brian Burton and Nate Minnick.
Hey, welcome to another episode of the Waste No Day podcast. Your host, Nate and Brian, hanging out with you again and looking forward to a great episode today as we bring back a fan favorite. That's right, Mr. Brent Buckley is going to be sitting in your passenger seat today, and we're going to have a great conversation about none other than Brian's favorite topic, sales. That's right. And we're going to get hard, hot, and heavy on how to set a proper lead and what to do when you're in the home to develop that lead into a full-fledged birth of a beautiful sales child.
Yeah, where's that applause button? Just over and over and over again.
So looking forward to that conversation. But of course, as we always do, before we get to the content of the show, Brian and I are going to go back and forth a little bit ourselves. So we're going to start with our quote. Brian?
Continuous effort, not strength or intelligence, is the key to unlocking our potential. I should have said that in a British accent because none other than Winston Churchill.
I was going to go Sean Connery, but okay.
No, it was on The Hunt for Red October. Yeah,
your best. Winners always whine about their best. Losers, sorry. Okay,
anyway. Losers. Yeah,
yeah. No, it's important, man. You know, the old adage about like, hey, just get up there and swing the bat, as opposed to sitting on the bench, right?
Bro, for real, it's like and I'm saying not strength, not intelligence, not even charisma, like $14.7 million in revenue in 1 year. Brent Buckley.
Are you talking
over
about
90?
Brent Buckley's company?
Brent Buckley's truck. Over 90 million
was it a clown
career
truck?
Sales.
Like
over
there's 7 techs?
million in career sales.
Ridiculous.
Brent has done. And let me tell you something. Role played like a mother trucker with Brent Buckley back in the day. Brent was not the best role player. I would argue whether Brent had the highest IQ in the room. He's not like a super Elon Musk super genius. No discernible things about Brent would put him at multiples above the sales numbers of everyone. A lot of people in that room would become superstars, but none of us scratched the surface on what Brent did. And the only discernible difference was his perseverance. This dude did not take breaks. He got better every single day from the time I met him in 2004. I think he started at the company like 2 months after I did, to this morning. That dude has taken zero breaks at getting better and learning and pushing himself and reaching for that next goal. That perseverance, or as Winston Churchill just called it, continuous effort, is what separates champions from average, little above average, normal people.
Yeah, you're not wrong there, Brian. And it's the level of service that he brings when he is speaking to a client, and the level of service that he trusts in his company and his install team, and the fulfillment of what he is saying to occur. That's amazing. And one of the things that, in today's world is almost becoming a non-negotiable is 24/7 service, or at least 24/7 phones. And I want to dwell on that for a minute. 24/7. It kind of brings to mind sometimes even a lack of service or a lack of fulfillment. And as you think about, like, even the animal kingdom, and how there's some predators out there, like, I don't know, like a lion or something like that, where 24/7 and lack of service and fulfillment is something that just kind of, I don't know, it's like it's a distant memory or dream that I'm not quite sure I can put together. But 24/7 and lions and missing the mark, it seems pertinent to today's conversation.
I'm surprised you were even watching, Nate, because the Eagles were out of the playoffs in the first half of the first quarter of the playoffs.
I know, but here's the difference, Brian. I knew they sucked going into that game.
I thought you guys were like 10-1 this season.
Your team was up by multiple touchdowns, literal multiple touchdowns, and for reasons that confuse mankind, from the greatest philosopher to the lowliest sports fan. You continue to just press your luck instead
perseverance,
of
baby.
Kicking the stupid ball between the uprights.
I think Winston Churchill just told you, my man. It's perseverance.
Yeah, don't use that quote with the Lions because they broke that quote. Didn't work.
All right. Come on, bro. Like, just get with it. Let's shake it off, buddy. All right, come on. We got people to serve. They gave us their time. They don't want to hear you whining about football. All right,
I'm not whining. I was making an illustrative analogy and trying to tie in together 24/7 service and
how my Wolverines persevered this year to become the national champions.
I said relevant events, Brian. Relevant events.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Hold on. I got a short story for us. There was a young boy, 14 years old. His father lost his job, and his family hit rough times. They moved into a Volkswagen van on a relative's lawn, and the young, aspiring comedian, who was so dedicated to his craft, began mailing his resume to the Carol Burnett Show. At age 10, he had to take an 8-hour-per-day factory job to help feed the family. That was after school. At age 15, he tried to perform his comedy routine on stage for the first time in a suit that his mom made him. Totally bombed, but he was undeterred. The next year, at 16, he quit school to focus on this failed comedy act full time. Shortly after that, he moved to LA, where he would park on Mulholland Drive every night and visualize his success. One of those nights, he actually wrote himself a check for $10 million, and on that check, it said, "For acting services rendered," which he dated for Thanksgiving 1995. Just before that date, he hit his payday with the movie Dumb and Dumber. He put the deteriorated check that he wrote himself, that he always kept in his wallet from that time to the time he actually made $10 million, in his father's casket. Ladies and gentlemen, with now a net worth of $180 million, actor and comedian Jim Carrey is the model of perseverance.
Wow. Can we get him on the show? That's amazing.
Yeah, let's work on that. It's just getting a little crazy with some of the speeches, but yeah, I'm game.
Let's have our people talk to his people. We'll get that set up.
Nate, hold on. Let's pause it. You got people? Nobody gave me any people, bro.
I thought you had people. Okay.
Oh, no, it wasn't. No. Maybe Ethan has people.
What a powerful story, though. I mean, I've never heard that, and certainly an emotional, bring back around or a callback, in which is kind of ironic for comedy, but really cool in how what he had projected himself to do and then worked so hard to accomplish actually came fulfilled.
Yeah, I can't imagine what he gets for a movie now, although he's not doing a whole lot, but I'm guessing he blew past that 10 million. Well, after the success of Dumb and Dumber. I mean, The Mask,
Liar, Liar.
Liar, Liar. Ace Ventura, for crying out loud. Can you imagine what he got for Ace Ventura too?
Right.
But yeah, 180 million net worth. And it sounds like from what he's making a movie, that's an easy net worth to attain. But if you start looking up your favorite actors, you're going to be shocked at how low their net worths are, because they just find ways to burn this money. 180 million net worth for an actor is pretty staggering. So congrats to him, man. You talk about perseverance right there.
Well, I'll tell you,
Fail.
We're also going to have somebody on who has failed many times, but has kept on going, and his net worth seems to also be increasing these days. And we look forward to having Brent in your passenger seat here in just a moment. But it is now time for that special time of the week, Brian, where we highlight one of our special listeners. Who do we have on the docket today?
Great podcast. 5-star. I love listening to these podcasts. Even if you take just a little bit or even one thing per podcast, it will improve your business and or your life. Diablo's Revenge.
Wow.
All right. You know what? I bet like 7 years earlier, he was playing like that Diablo computer game. And he was just like, well, this will be the only review I ever write. So it made his name. And like we say just about every week, whatever name you decide to make for this review, that's you for life. So make sure you put Waste No Day in it.
Absolutely. Well, Brian, appreciate that. And make sure you put Waste No Day in your day today, and share it with some other friends out there too who you think would enjoy this episode or any of the ones that we've put out in the past. And let us know who you're doing that with, or tag them on Facebook, or share in the comments. And of course, leave a review if you haven't done so yet. For now, though, it is time to put Mr. Brent Buckley in your passenger seat. Our guest today is Brent Buckley. He is a second-generation HVAC technician who got his start at 1 Hour Heating and Air Conditioning in Colorado. Brent has been in the industry for 22 years, started as an apprentice, worked his way to installer, then selling technician, then comfort advisor, and now business owner. He has sold over $90 million personally in residential equipment sales in his career, and is an industry sales leader. I think that goes without saying. Brent and his beautiful wife, Lindsay, have 4 children and enjoy supporting and watching them play sports like football, volleyball, baseball, and softball. And they like to spend their free time at the lake house in Minnesota, where they boat, fish, and catch up with family. Welcome back to the show, Brent.
Thanks, guys, for having me back.
Oh, please. The pleasure is all on this side of the iPad, my man. The pleasure's all in the passenger or in the driver's seat of this truck that you're in the passenger seat of your first, second, and third guest we've ever had on the show that sold over 14 million in revenue in 1 year. And because you were on 3 times.
Yeah, man, we are looking forward to hearing more about that. It's been a minute since you've been on the show here, Brent. And so we like to start off our podcast with some introductory questions just about like who you are and what you've been up to. So for those of our listeners who aren't familiar with who you are, maybe you could give us a little bit of a background about your story. And then for those of our listeners who have heard you on the podcast before, but aren't quite as up to date with your current affairs, kind of update us as to where you are right now.
Yeah, my name is Brent Buckley. Been in the industry about 21 years. Spent majority of that time as a selling technician, then a comfort advisor, then business owner, and then we were fortunate enough to have an exit from last company. Yeah,
A positive exit, as it were.
yeah.
I mean, a lot of people get exited from companies, especially in 2023, but yours went a little bit differently, right?
Yeah, it was an 8-figure exit. So
nice, buddy.
Yeah, that's okay. We'll take that. So, I mean, kind of going back to even how you got into the industry, man. Like, what was the nickel tour on your story in terms of why you got into HVAC?
Well, I got into it because my dad was in the industry. So like a lot of the people who probably listen to this podcast, their family's been in HVAC or plumbing or electrical, and they've kind of followed in their parents' footsteps or grandparents or whatever it might be. So it wasn't something I really was excited about doing, but at the same time, it was a great opportunity for me to get into an industry and learn a trade that I previously might not have had that same opportunity. So right out of high school, I was able to start as an install helper back in 2002. at 18 years old. And so that's, in generalized speaking, I mean, that's kind of how I got started in the industry, was through family.
Yeah, and that's definitely a typical story of many of our listeners, as you mentioned. But what's not typical is where you've ended up here, not only as a partner in Service Champions and their organization, but also with, as you mentioned, an 8-figure exit. And so I want to kind of like start us off by taking us back a little bit, if you will. Were you the type of guy that like you were just born with sales acumen and like, you came out of the box just selling and selling and selling and all these things? Were you adverse to it and there was like a change moment in your life that, turned you about, or how did you become the monster of sales that you are today?
Well, I think at first, I wasn't. I was, it was probably pretty choppy and at best, and fumbling my way through, a presentation. But over time, I stuck with it and stayed disciplined and consistent, with keep trying over and over and over again, and new days, and every day is a new day. So I would, and Brian can contest this, but back when me and him worked together back in what, 2004, 5, 6.
Yep. Yes. Keep going. 7, 8, 9, and 10.
We really worked pretty hard to make the best presentation that we could do and communicate that to the customers. And I know the old saying, practice makes perfect, but it is so true, because if you can stay consistent and always work on your perfecting your craft, you can be great at really anything. You don't even have to have that much talent. If you work hard and stay consistent, you can really develop a lot out of yourself.
Is that where you would place yourself, Brent? Are you a man without talent who just practiced enough times?
No, I think there is a bit of talent there as far as communication, body language, the way that, I hold myself. So I think there is a certain level of maturity that I've, been able to, and that didn't happen from day one. That happened over time. Um, but I think that I have an extremely good work ethic. I'm disciplined, and I'm very consistent in what I do. And I think on a daily basis, you can ask anybody that has worked around me. It's I hold myself at much higher standards.
Obviously, you must, because it's not easy to produce $1 million of sales, much less 14 or 15 times that. And that is your record as it stands for right now. And so our focus today is around this concept of the presentation that sold 15 million or just shy of $15 million in a year. And that's more than probably the average HVAC company is doing all combined, much less by one person. And yet somehow you managed to do that. And before we get any farther, we need to dispel the haters, because as soon as somebody hears that, there's the immediate, what is this guy doing to rip him off? Like, how many old ladies did he beat over the head? And
Thousands.
all these other things. Frankly, I'm not even sure there's enough old ladies to get to 15 million if you were doing that. But, talk to us about the ethics that were behind that number. What is your stance on how do you get that number, and how do you keep yourselves between the moral buoys?
Well, I spent most of my career as a selling technician, and I was only able to get up to about $7.5 million as a selling tech. So when we started Fetch Tech, the company that was acquired by Service Champions, I started off as a selling tech, but I soon realized that I couldn't really scale myself. So what I decided to do is build a team that revolved around me. So I still had touches on the sale, but they were out there basically going through. So I was turned really into a comfort advisor, and I had, it started out with like 3 to 4 technicians, and it went to like 12 technicians in 2022. And so I had all these technicians out in the field generating interest. And then I would go from one call to the next call and the next call 6, 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. And that 14.7 million was 97% in home. So I had actually physically went out there and presented myself, the company, the options, And at the same time, it was a really great training experience for the technician that was there and involved, because they were just getting them warm and fuzzy and getting them interested in what needed to be done. But I was able to kind of take it from there. And my presentation on, if you ask anybody that's worked with me or has been around me for a period of time, they would tell you that we don't just sell air conditioning units, we sell comfort. So that involves possibly ductwork, zoning systems, IAQ, equipment. So my average ticket wasn't the average company in town or in the country probably either. So my average ticket on retail sales was $25,000.
Wow.
So when you couple in ductwork and IAQ and equipment, we had some gigantic sales. I mean, my biggest sale I ever had was like 240,000 at one house.
Sheesh.
That was the one where the guy called in sick, right?
That was another one.
Another $200,000.
No, that was the guy that actually didn't want to do it. He called out sick, didn't want to go to the house because it had
it's like Lake Las Vegas or something?
Yeah, 8 units on the house. Yeah. And then the crazy story about that is we're over there doing that job. The neighbor came over and got us and said they were having problems, and we sold another 6 systems at the other house down the street.
Wow. The most expensive sick day in the history of HVAC.
I know. So, of course, they sent out like the green text, the text that really, they're just learning the flip process and all that still. And those guys turned over the lead to me. So.
Wow. What kind of steak dinner did you take those guys to?
Oh, they went on a vacation, bro.
So, Brent, I mean, another angle at this is, okay, well, yeah, I mean, anybody can sell $25,000 in Las Vegas. I mean, the average home out there is like 6 figures, 7 figures, I should say. And that, yeah, I mean, anybody can sell 7 systems a day if they're just getting constantly alley-ooped by all these lay down clients. Are you living a cherry life, or what's that mean to you?
Well, I think, that's just limited beliefs that people have. I've traveled to Texas. I've traveled to California. I've done Colorado. I've been able to sell in all those markets. I'm in Seattle right now, and we just sold 2 systems today, off of 4 calls. So, off of tune-ups, maintenances. So I can do it anywhere. It's just having the team around me too. It takes a lot to do 14.7 million. That's not solely me, but that's having the right call center that can take the calls, the right manager that can manage those calls, the right technician on the right call, the right technician flipping the job properly. And so there's a lot of things that go in, and you have the fulfillment part of it, So it takes a whole village to do something like that. And I would never take credit for the entire 14.7 million that was sold. Yes, I sold it, but it did take a lot of touches to make that happen, by a great team. That great team was, developed over time by me and some of the partners and the people, the operations of the business. And so, basically, it wasn't an overnight thing to get to 14.7, but I knew the blueprint. I've done it before, not to those numbers, but building a business with Ken Goodrich over the years. Brian could tell you, we started from nothing. When I joined there was like 6 technicians total with plumbing and air. And we built that company. I think today, Yes Air Conditioning is pacing to do like 45 million, or they did 45 million last year.
Wow.
So when we started,
it was little M&S Air with like you and 2 other techs, and then Green Valley Plumbing with like me, Mike, and Tom.
Yeah.
it's like 6, 7, 8 people total. 45 million now, huh? Not too shabby. Nate just emailed me and said he dares you to go to Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Just slide into the 1 hour there and try to sell 14 million this year. Said, no way. He bets you $100 you can't do it.
Cool.
$100 cash money.
We'll look for you next week. That sounds great.
Well, yeah, we were very fortunate. Wow, dude, it is crazy because I'm talking to people about that recently, where I'm like, Yeah, we didn't know Ken was a big deal then, right? Because like Ken wasn't a big deal then. Like we had no idea. Like we knew, like we would be sitting at the end of the table at the goal dinners and stuff, and he would start talking about business, and we would just be sitting there like our jaws on the table, like the stuff that he would just randomly say to us was like, notepad worthy brilliance. But we didn't. But he didn't really have a big name at the time.
He was a big deal to me. When I went to his office, I was probably pretty scared.
Usually he's always intimidating for sure. And we didn't quite weigh what we do now. And Ken was like 100 pounds heavier than he is now. So
I think the biggest thing that I learned from Ken Goodrich was accountability and discipline. He instilled that in his managers, which then went to us, but I think that's the biggest thing I learned with Ken was discipline and
that drive
and accountability and that drive. And the way that he, incentivized us from there to the way that we did meetings every single day. Those were all little things that kind of shape and mold you. I mean, I was 19 years old when I started there,
Yeah.
So, it became kind of a natural part of me. And, I started my own business, and started training, developing people and some of the managers in the building and stuff. I kind of use those same my core principles or the things that I use to help, that help me kind of grow. And I was able to develop a massive sales team there. I mean, without me there, those guys can do $2 to $3 million a month. And that's without me there. And I kind of got it to that point. So, right along doing in-home sales presentations while the technicians there, they would call me, get me on site. I would sit in, they would sit in the whole process. And at some point, some of the guys would take on all the information they're getting and kind of develop a process that worked for them. And then I would kind of, this last year has been in 2023 was letting these guys loose a little bit and having them try to close the deals on their own and start getting some confidence in being, a great technician and a sales guy out there,
Dude, I do kind of feel like, are you a UFC guy? You still watch UFC, right?
Yeah.
I don't know why I said that because I know we used to watch the fights together back in the day, but back in the Chuck Liddell and Rampage days. But I do kind of feel like, Habib Nurmagomedov retiring before, I don't know. I mean, he had his glory, but like, God knows how undefeated he was going to go, like nobody was going to beat that cat. And yeah. I know you did 14.7, bro, but I just feel like you got 20 in you. And we need to get you back in a truck.
Yeah. And that's what's great. Right now I'm, working for Champions Group and able to do ride-alongs and stuff with some of the guys and really show them what I can do and what's possible and really assist them with developing their process that works for them. Because everyone's process is a little different. Everyone's personality is a little different, so their process is going to be a little bit different, and you got to figure out what works for you. There's no smoking gun, but I will tell you this: if you're disciplined and you work hard and you stay consistent, you will be great. There's no doubt about that. I think if you give it enough time, sometimes that's 1 to 2 years for some people. That might be 10, 15, 20 years for other people. But giving up is really the downfall of most people in any industry. You're just like you're talking about in UFC. I mean, he hung it up and he was probably not at his prime or even close to it.
Yeah, he might not even been in his prime yet. But right. he had this thing, and when his dad died, that was it for him. And there's not much more he could win. I mean, he did everything he set out to do, but it would have just been, obviously for a fight fan, fun to watch him keep going and see how many wins he racked up. And, that's what I'm saying about you, buddy. You're not even 40 yet, are you?
No, I'll be 40 next month.
All right.
March 17th. So
all right. So let's get you to 45. Let's see if you can do 2025. All right.
But like back to UFC, you look at like Conor McGregor. He's not that great, but he's probably the most well-known UFC fighter
Oh yeah, by a
ever, right?
long shot. Yeah, by
Yeah.
a long shot.
And he's not
Yeah.
the greatest. I mean, but his work ethic, and he just never gives up. Like, he'll probably come back and fight again. I don't know if he's on a card right now or not, but
I don't think so, but I can't imagine he's done. He just
no.
it's in him. It's in him.
Right.
So you're out there doing your thing, and you and I talked about this on the phone earlier, which is that like you clearly you don't need to work anymore. I mean, you can just do some investing and partner in some businesses and not ever run a call again. But you're flying around the country for Service Champions or the Champions Group, right?
Yep.
And you're doing ride-alongs and setting up sales teams and setting up sales processes for these businesses of theirs around the country. You don't have to be doing that, but is it still just you have that fight in you and you enjoy the ring?
Yeah, I took a little bit of some time off, and I just don't have it in me to sit out. And yeah, I really want to at this point give back to the industry, especially my team, which is the Champions Group, which is very large. I think they have 22 companies in their portfolio, and so there's plenty of guidance and and work that I can help them out with. And so, yeah, right now I'm teaming up with some of the brands and doing some sales trainings and helping them kind of scale their service department slash sales department from where they're at. Because every company is like every person, right? They're a little different. They do things a little different. They manage a little bit different. Their process of selling is a little different. So, some of the branches can't fathom even generating sales leads off of their service department. They're strictly doing sales off of retail leads that come in, estimates.
Ugh.
So the service department has so much opportunity in a lot of companies, not saying Service Champions, but just in general, they're kind of missing the whole maintenance portion of that industry, of our industry.
Oh wow, in 2024, huh?
Yeah, I mean, it's when we were at Yes, we had it down, right? We created, and I was able to manage and build a sales team through the technicians and the sales department over there. We were doing 25 million in the first 12 months. So a lot of these businesses, they get most of their replacements through retail leads and not so much the service department.
So what does a really good flip to you look like in HVAC? And this will translate to electrical, to plumbing, to whatever services. But how does you're not on the call yet? Nate is on the call. What's a really good look at a flip to you?
A really good look would be, a technician that has built like a really solid relationship with the customer. That customer would, probably trust them quite a bit. They spent the time to get to know the customer, and there's no agendas behind it. They're genuine about it, and they're really just enjoy being at their house and trying to help them out with any issues that they have. So the relationship part of it is really important, the communication. That technician doing, a really thorough job as far as cleaning their units and doing an inspection. At that point, their ability to present some options as far as repairs is really great. If they can build a decent ticket and present it to the client, it's an easy transition. I've coached all my guys to basically say, hey, I've went over these 3 options for repairs, but one thing I do want you to consider is that the system is over 10 years old, and I'd hate to see you spend, $1,000, $1,500, $2,000 on this unit when, all you would be doing is kicking the can down the road and, delaying this replacement. And I think it's in your best interest to, have a conversation with my manager, and it's as simple as that. And if they've done and built a really great relationship and they're not just trying to like slam dunk it really quick and get out of there or set the lead and get out of there really quick, the close rate, I mean, the way that I've trained my guys over at Fetch, my closing rate was like 85%. If I went to the customer's house, they were buying. Like some of the good guys, The guys that were more advanced in their process, might go into talking about, price conditioning. They might, they, I would say running credit, but that's typically, I only had one guy that was comfortable doing that and getting it to where they're like pre-qualifying the customer to figure that out there. But that's really advanced. But more importantly, just being there and helping them out and having a great relationship with them.
So conversely, Brent, I mean, what are like the top 3 rookie mistakes that any tech flipper does that gets them in trouble?
Rookie mistakes, jumping to the replacement right away, talking about a replacement right away, talking about the age of their equipment right away, asking them about their finances right away, without really, that technician that goes in and they're just trying to get the replacement really fast. Me and Brian worked with one of those guys.
One.
That's a rookie mistake. Yes, you will get some, here and there, but the majority of the people it's going to be a red flag,
And the ones you don't get become 1-star Google reviews on top of it.
Exactly. Yeah. The guys that are good that we can go out and consistently close deals for them at 20, 30, 40, 50, $200,000. They've built an amazing relationship with the customer and they've given them, repair options before we've ever talked about replacement. I've always encouraged every guy that I worked with to give the customers repair options before I get there. So they know that the system can be repaired. It's not in their best interest to repair it, but at least you have the option to do that. So when we do go over all the replacement options, they're able to kind of, and if they're not going to buy it, we're able to kind of fall back to, well, let's just at least get this band-aided up right now and get you guys going.
So pushing back on that a little bit, Brent, I mean, what if I'm out on a system today and there's no obvious repairs needed, but the system is of age, it's 15 years old. It's one of those old systems that just keeps on going and going and going. And, you have a client who's like, I haven't replaced anything on this machine for 15 years. It's doing just fine for me. Is that still something that we can conversate with the client about? And how would you have that conversation?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of reasons to replace systems outside of, failed components. Lack, maintenance, the coil being dirty, just the cost of removing the coil and cleaning that. Why would we invest, $800 to do that? The energy consumption of the system versus what a new system would be. And the reality is that, the customer is probably going to be replacing that unit anyways, shortly. So, why do it on an emergency basis, especially in a climate like Las Vegas where the temperatures get at 110 degrees? Like, I have a conversation with a customer not too long ago and they just said that. They were like, oh, it's 25 years old, never done anything with it. I said, yeah, you haven't. And usually, when it breaks, it'll break, and it'll be 110 degrees. And, people are able to be reasonable. It's all in how, it's not what you say, but how you say it, And it's all in the presentation and the way that you talk to the customer and relate to them. But at the end of the day, if they're a 25-year-old machine, they know it needs to be replaced. They're concerned about it. That's probably why you're there, looking at it. So you don't necessarily have to have something wrong with the system. But you could be talking about the maintenance of it. You could be talking about the energy savings. You got to really find the pain point for the customer, what their issues are,
Yeah. So speaking of how you say it and what you say, would you be kind enough to do some role play for us today, Brent?
Sure.
All right. So let's say Brian is the client and you're out there to do a routine maintenance. It is a system that is up in years. So we'll say it's, somewhere between that 12 and 17 year range, if that's fair. But there's no discernible necessary repairs for the unit to continue working today. So it is working as it is. There may be some wear and tear on the parts that you see because of the age, but it's still chugging along. Let's role play the wrong way to do this first. So, put yourself back in like rookie Brent shoes, from like 65 years ago, how you would have done it back then.
When you were only turning $1 million a year.
Yeah. When you were 13 and you made your first sale, what's the bad conversation? Or, I mean, to be realistic, for all the people that you coach and all the techs that you see across the nation in different states and all this, what are some of the embarrassing, forehead rubbing type scenarios that you hear? Role play that for us with Brian.
Yeah, I mean, I think like I said earlier, the worst is really them bringing up how old their equipment is right when they walk in the door. That's a terrible thing. Or they've been up on their roof or in their basement looking at their heater and for 5 to 10 minutes, and they come up and say, "Hey, this thing really needs to be replaced."
Ugh.
So I'm like, "Oh, don't do that." Or, "Mrs. Jones, did you know these things cost $40,000 now?" I'm like, "Oh, don't say that yet." Don't say that yet. We'll ease into that, and it can be up to 40. There's a lot of stuff that is cheaper. So, big trigger words for a customer. Think like I always try to think like if I'm the customer, right? And somebody came into my house and they told me I needed a new unit after looking at it for 10 minutes and kicked it, I would be like, really? Are you kidding me? But if somebody came out there and they did a really thorough maintenance, they cleaned out my coils, they showed me all the leaves they took out of the air conditioning unit, they, when they had the top off, they brought me and they showed me some of the oil that's kind of leaking from the motor. It's not necessary, but that's kind of like the first signs of it beginning to fail. And they were just easing me into it, and I was kind of understanding it. And during my process, I'm really trying to just get them involved periodically, like with things that I see that might be going on, and keep their mind going through the call. I think the biggest mistake I see from riding along with some of these techs is they will wait till the very end and present a laundry list of problems with their system or their plumbing system or HVAC system that totals $3,000. And it's really, and then they talk about, well, you should replace it, Well, it's very overwhelming for the customer when you throw up on them at the very end with all these things that are wrong with their equipment. It's like, really? I just had you out here for maintenance. I got 10 things that need to be repaired. But if you actually get them involved during the process of the service call, and you're doing small closes is what I call it. And that's why I kind of coach the guys. Small closes is like bringing the customer to the equipment and saying, "Hey, I just noticed this, why I had the top off. I wanted you to see this. Do you know how long this has been leaking oil?" And they're going to tell you, "I don't know. Nobody showed me this before." Okay, I wanted to let you know about that, why I had this off. That's all. I'll report back to you when I get finished. So that was a small close. So now the entire time the customer is thinking about, oh, shoot, I'm going to have to either replace this motor, or if it's old, they're probably thinking about a replacement unit, right? So, and I might do that maybe, it depends on the customer, but it could be just once, it could be 2-3 times. If I'm not getting a lot of interaction from the customer, I might do it 2 or 3 different times, and just bring them to the equipment and get them involved.
Are you doing it the exact same way 2-3 different times? Are you changing it up? I mean, I know in most cases, like, we always feel like the client's going to see that you did the same thing 2 or 3 times. They don't. They have no concept of what we're doing.
No, it's always gauged around my ability to adjust my presentation to the customer I'm dealing with at that point. So if it's a fast-paced customer that it's hard for me to keep their attention, and they like me, if you came to my house and I needed a new air conditioning unit, I would not sit down for 2 hours for a presentation. It's not going to happen. Like, just tell me how much it is and I'll buy it. So you have to read those customers, right? Or you have those customers that really want the time spent and they want to really know every detail of every little thing that is being done. And you got to, it's taken me years to get to this point where I can read a customer and the body language and get their interaction by asking questions and kind of understand what kind of a customer I'm dealing with at that time. And that may mean, I may only involve them one time in a small close, or it might mean that I have to involve them 3 or 4 different times in a small close. But it just really depends on the customer I'm dealing with.
So if you bring a client out to the unit and you're talking about doing one of those small closes, like, hey, how long has this oil been leaking? And they're like, oh shoot, yeah, I don't know, is that a problem? And they start engaging with you. Well, we have kind of been thinking about replacing this unit. Do you hold them off at that point and say, hey, that's a great idea. Tell you what, let me finish what I'm doing here and we'll circle back to it? Or do you engage right away if they bring it up?
No, I wanna defer to the end of the call because I want to be able to sit down on the table and say, "Hey, remember when we talked about that? Remember when we talked about that?" Because yes, they remember. They're thinking about the entire time you're there, you know. And no, if you throw out a price out there about what a motor cost or a new unit cost or anything like that, it's over. It's done. Like I found that out for the most part. They're either going to think it's too much money or they're going to go with it. One of the two. And it's too much. It's always too much, right?
Right.
So yeah, being able to do small closes throughout the call and just show them and get them involved in that. And sometimes you can't, sometimes you have to take pictures and you have to show the customer. So I'll take a picture, bring it in, show them. And then they may start asking like, well, how much does that cost? How long do you think that'll last? And I always defer it to, well, let me finish my inspection and kind of go through everything else and make sure that there's nothing else going on, and I'll report back to you at the end. And, it's getting them involved in their brain moving, So at the end, it's not a surprise to them. It's not overwhelming, Does that make sense?
I'm with you, man. So let's role play this thing. So Brian's your client. You've done a couple of those small closes with him, and now you're sitting down to discuss with him not only the findings of the overall maintenance that you were there to do, but how you are going to bring about this conversation of replacement. Let's hear what you have.
Yeah. Hey, Brian. I know
Hey, Brent.
that I know that we had discussed a few things that were going on with the system. You had some questions, so I'm here to answer anything that you might have as far as that motor outside.
Yeah, if I have any questions, it's one, how much is it going to be? And two, I mean, you kind of mentioned softly a couple times, like the age that it is. How long do these things typically last?
Well, I mean, typically here in the Vegas Valley, they can last like 10, 15 years on average. I think how old's your unit again?
8 years.
8 years? Okay. Yeah, it's this is an 8-year-old house, right? You had
That's
it put
correct.
in by the
Yeah.
builder. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it can last less than 10 years, especially on the new builds because like new construction units, and so they don't always put the best equipment in. I'm sure you know that, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you to replace anything else in your house?
We just had our water heater done, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that happens. The water quality here is really bad. Did you end up going with that water purification system, or did you just do the water heater?
No, we just had some kind of random cheap knockoff company that replaced my water heater. Didn't even test my water. They're such hacks. Hacks, I tell you. Hacks.
Huh. Yeah, I noticed that, they didn't put the earthquake straps and stuff on it and the pan. You probably wouldn't be a bad idea to have one of our plumbers come out and kind of just take a look at it and make sure everything's up to code,
Sure. Yeah. Have them swing by. If they're as
Yeah.
professional as you, Brent.
Yeah,
I want
for
to meet
sure.
them.
Yeah. But anyways, back to the I'll get that plumbing appointment set up when I get done here. So it might be able to just have somebody come out and look at it for free if that's okay with you.
Perfect. Yeah. That makes
Okay.
even more
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, maybe if we do the motor or something like that, maybe we can get that free inspection done. We'll see. But anyways, the motor probably should be replaced. Wouldn't you agree? I mean, there's oil and stuff coming out of it.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. The reason I was asking how long does the system typically last, and you're saying around 10 years, it's like, does it make sense to put that money? How much is the motor versus the new system?
Well, a new system, there's a lot of options, and we could go over that if you want. If I was you too, I mean, at 8 years old, to spend, the motors with the capacitor and stuff's about $1,200. If you get the maintenance plan, there's a discount there. but it is kind of a lot of money to put into a system that's, approaching 10 years old on builder grade. It probably, before we did the motor, I think it would be a good idea for you to at least have a conversation with my manager and about a replacement unit. I mean, don't you think that's probably a good idea?
When you say a conversation with your manager?
Yeah, they can just kind of go over some different options we have for replacement. If it doesn't make sense, we can just, end up doing the motor anyways.
Is that over the phone? We just get them on speakerphone?
I got a guy that's actually at the shop. He's not too far away. He can shoot over here right now while I'm here.
Then, okay. And he just come over and what? Give me pricing?
Yeah, I'll stay here. So, if you don't want to do the replacement, then I can do the motor if you want.
Oh, okay. So he's going to give me pricing on that, and then we'll make a decision which way to go.
Yeah, I think at 8 years old, like I said, you're approaching that 10-year mark, and it's a builder grade unit, and it's probably worth having a conversation about. So, I think, I don't know. If you really want to put $1,200 into the machine to kick the can down the road another year or two, I mean, they got great financing plans and stuff. I think you should hear them out.
I love that. I don't know if you guys could tell, but he's struggling to stay in technician mode and not go into advisor mode. It's killing him. I know if your tech said the things you just said, you'd be pissed when you got there. And I'm like trying to drag him. But I love what you kept doing as the technician, where you would not say, I should replace it. You would simply say, it makes more sense to just have all your options. Let's get my manager over and let him give you all your options.
He actually asked Brian. He didn't really.
Yeah, that's true.
He asked, like, don't you think it might make sense to gather your options?
Yeah, and the way you kept doing that, and I was like teeing it up for you to tell me to replace the system, and you wouldn't do it. And that is a well-trained flipping tech that will not say, yes, you need to replace it. Just, yes, you should have all your options. Or in your case, even better, don't you think you should have?
What's great is then I get somebody else out there. They wait, the time frame to get them out there. I'm sitting there on site. Now there's time invested from the client, from the technician, and now the sales guy that's coming out. And it's harder for people to not move forward with that option, especially when they've committed so much time to having you come out and stuff. And the way that the technician set up the flip was, look, I can repair this thing, but it's probably not worth doing. I think you should consider replacement, right? And he's built a really solid foundation, what I call, a good relationship. Trust is built. The people really like him, So, and that's their job as far as the tech flip goes. And that's kind of what I'm, doing. And when the people I'm training with every day, they get to see that version of it,
Are the majority of the techs you're training staying on site and waiting for the comfort advisor?
Yes. The way that I trained the technicians at Fetch-A-Tech was that the goal is to get a comfort advisor there on site with them there within what I say an hour period. What happens is that if they reschedule that appointment for another day, or there's a delay in us getting out there, the value and the relationship and the urgency dissipates. Mm-hmm. And so you're probably 10 times more likely to get it sold and closed while the technician's there on site than it would be if they booked it 4 or 5 days out. Because now they've done all kinds of research. They talked to Uncle Joe in Florida that had a unit put in for $4,000, and their friend does air conditioning. And, my experience is that if they book it out a day is okay, but if they book it out 2 days, a week, 3 days, something like that, the chances of me even getting the opportunity to go out there goes in half. They usually cancel. Or if I do go out there, there's all kinds of objections that come up that weren't initially there when the technician was there on the site. So, and I understand that, getting in front of a customer on the same day, as far as a sales presentation, is tough. It's not always possible. but when it is and when it can be, it should be done, and it should be done the same day.
So, two logistical questions there, Brent. If I'm the technician who is setting the lead, what am I doing for the next hour? And then the second question is, in high demand situations like super cold, super hot, how are you possibly getting response time in that short of a timeline for all these calls that are coming in?
So, first answer to your question, not talking about air conditioning, not sitting in your truck. You guys might laugh, but I tell my technicians, plant your ass on that couch and don't get up. And that means talk to the customer, have coffee with them, pet their dog, ask them if you can change any light bulbs, batteries. I showed up to one of my technicians that was cleaning solar panels on the roof of the customer, because nobody had. There's bird crap all over in Vegas. We got pigeons everywhere, and solar is a pretty big thing out there, and same in Phoenix. But he was literally brushing and cleaning and washing off the solar panels on the roof. Well, when I got there, it was with him doing that built so much value for the customer. It didn't matter if I was $100,000 for the unit; she was going to buy it.
Right.
So there's a lot of gestures that go a long way, and I think the most common gesture and the easiest one is always accept the cup of coffee or the water they're giving you. Drink it, sit down with them, talk to them. Know them as a person. Get to know their hobbies, and ask how long they live in the home. Ask them questions you already know the answers to. I do that all the time. Like, I know how long they live in the home. I looked it up. And so what I don't want them talking about is after they've gotten the commitment for me to get on site or a comfort advisor to get on site and go over options, I want them to stop talking about the air conditioning unit or the plumbing repair. And I want them to really get the customer warm and fuzzy and build a relationship and just talk to them and as they wait.
Love that. Now, what about in these high demand situations where waiting becomes a challenge because there's just so many people waiting?
Well, first off, like when I was at Fetch, I built, and even at Yes, we built a team that was able to, and Brian could probably back this up, but we built a team that we could manage when we had high demand. I could still get a comfort advisor out there within an hour or two. If it got real busy, if I have guys that are really great closers, we might do a phone close. I almost would rather do a phone close on the phone with a customer and a technician that's in the field in high demand than book it out 2 or 3 days later, because that customer is no longer going to be there. They're going to either bought the equipment from someone else, at least in our market in Vegas. They would have either bought, it's like a water heater leaking, and you're telling them, okay, I can get a sales guy out there to go over options for a water heater in 2 days. Do you think that customer is going to be there still?
Right. Yeah. They're gone. And that makes sense. Of course, because, strike while the iron's hot, right?
Yeah. The emotions and the urgency's there, and the customer's all in the feelings about it. And, for one, and two, it's an emergency, right? It's high demand. People are needing our services. If we made them wait a day or two for somebody to come out, that's bad service, right? In my opinion. And so I'd rather do one of two things. One is be prepared, which I'm usually prepared. Or two, the backup plan would be to have that technician going over options over the phone with me, and so that customer didn't have to wait. And I might say something in the fact of like, hey, Mrs. Jones, I know we talked about having one of our managers come out there, but because it's 110 degrees, we are really, really backed up right now. I don't really want you to wait, have to wait 2 days, 3 days for us to come out and then another day or two to install. That wouldn't be fair to you, right?
Right.
They'd be like, no, I don't want to wait 2 days. Okay, let's go over this. Let's get on FaceTime and let's kind of go over all the options that we've got for you. And let's get something picked out and let's get it done. Get it done.
So one more logistical question on there, Brent. In a scenario like that, a lot of our technicians, a lot of technicians in general are dealing with what we commonly call one-leggers, where there's just one person in the house and there's another person who is involved in the decision-making process who is unavailable. How are you carrying out the execution of this 1 hour turn, in my spouse is at work, my spouse is unavailable, this is fairly common that there's somebody else involved who is not readily available for a deep conversation. How do you overcome that?
Well, this is my favorite objection. And when my guys tell me this, I just kind of laugh in my head because they're like, well, it's a one-legger. And I'm like, well, there are times where you really just can't get a hold of them. But most of the time, like if I was at home and my air conditioning unit was out and my wife was at work and unavailable and I needed to buy a new air conditioning unit, I'd be giving her a freaking call. And if I really wanted to buy that, I would be making it happen. So a lot of times the one-legger is just an objection for other areas that maybe they have an objection towards, maybe price, might be equipment, whatever it might be. Most of the time it's price. Because Brian, you live in Arizona now, right?
Yep.
If it's 110 degrees and you just waited a day and a half for an HVAC guy to get to your house.
I got some unhappy family members.
And I told you it was going to be 15 grand. Are you getting a hold of the one leg?
Yeah, I'm getting a hold of the wallet, buddy. The wallet's coming out.
You're not even going to ask, right?
No, of course not.
So your water heater's out, right? You got water coming down your garage driveway. And are you really going to tell the plumber that's there with the water heater that you need to talk to your wife about it?
Yeah, I'm glad we had you over today, but give me a couple days to talk to the missus.
Yeah, it's an objection. In that case, it's an objection. It's an emergency, right? Like they're going to have to do it, right? They think your price is too high probably, or that you haven't built enough value to justify the price.
All right, so let's do it. Nate's the customer now. Hit him with it, Nate.
Hey, Brent, I appreciate you coming out here, man. And I appreciate you offering to have a phone call or your manager stop on by. This seems like a pretty big decision, and I'm not sure I'm prepared to even have a conversation without my wife being here. Is this something that we could schedule for another time?
Yeah, I totally agree. Replacing your heating and cooling system can be, a major home improvement. And, do you agree that, what I presented today is probably what needs to be done?
Well, it's certainly concerning, yes. And obviously we want to make sure that we have heating and cooling in our house for the foreseeable future. So it's not that I'm questioning what you're saying. It's that this feels big,
Oh yeah, it's definitely a big home improvement for your house. And when is your wife supposed to be home?
She gets off around 5, so a couple hours from now.
Oh, okay, just a couple hours. I've got another call in the area. How about I swing by after that call, and it should be probably perfect timing. We can kind of sit down and go over everything.
Sure. Wow, I didn't realize you worked that late, but if that's possible, that would be fine.
Yeah, I'm already in the area. I have another call off of College and 4th Street, and it'll probably take me a couple hours, and then I'll hit it on the way home. You don't have air conditioning, and I'm sure your family would appreciate probably speeding this process up as much as possible. When you agree?
Yeah, I would. That'll be fine. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll see you in a few hours.
You obviously know the difference between talking to somebody who, like Nate in this situation, who's very sincerely not making a move until he talked to his wife, and the person who's throwing a smokescreen at you, which may very well be, I might be able to get this a little cheaper. Let me look around a little bit.
The key was he told me his wife's going to be home in 2 hours. Mm-hmm. So I knew that he was interested in replacing it, and he really needed his wife involved. And it would be a couple hours from now, and maybe we can get this done. If he told me, well, I don't know when she gets off, and her next day off's Friday, maybe we can do something then. You know, that would tell you the urgency in the customer's mind, right? Then I would start probing questions like, well, Mr. Jones, the unit's out and you don't have any air. I mean, can we figure out something right here that works for both of us, And see the difference? Because I was able to kind of tell if that was a one-legger or if it actually was a one-legger,
Yeah.
So,
and if Nate had gotten a little squirrely and I'm not sure when, and well, she's a nurse and sometimes she picks up extra shifts and like, I'll just call you. Hey, how about you just leave the quote, shoot me an email, that kind of thing. You're going to push in a little bit more for the close.
Yeah, great. Yeah. I'll push a little bit more, or if I can tell it's not going to happen, what I have done in the past is I'll shoot him a text like 2-3 hours later, like when I know his wife's probably gonna be home in the evening. And when I say, hey, John, this is Brent with Fetch-A-Tech. I know I was out your home a little bit earlier. Hey, we had a spot open up tomorrow morning. I know it's last minute, and I just wanted to kind of let you know that there's availability. And my general manager offered a 10% discount if you guys wanted to fill that spot. So no pressure, but if you'd like to fill it, let me know. Save you a little bit of money, and I know your wife is coming home tonight, so keep me posted. And if they're really interested, I think, I've gotten so many deals off of doing that, and it's not a huge discount, 10%. Our guys are allowed to do up to 10%. So they might text me back, we're getting other bids, or they might text me back, sorry, it's just not going to happen right now, or that sounds great, but, follow up with me on Friday. Then you kind of know where you stand, right? Most salespeople, they leave and they just don't know where they stand, right? They never follow up. They never have another conversation. And through text, it's not, really, I don't know what the word is, but it's not difficult to respond to somebody in text. Now answering the phone and actually having a live conversation with somebody is a little harder. So,
well, speaking of having hard conversations, Brian, what would it sound like for you to overcome that, like from your angle?
Well, I have probably like 3 or 4 rebuttals, like that I would consider canned rebuttals for that one. Now, one of them, I think I came up with you, or maybe it was a little bit after I left Yes, but I thought it was from the Yes days, which was the 100% guarantee close, which is to say, hey man, look, why don't you just go ahead and get this taken care of for her, so this isn't something she has to worry about when she gets home, and I'll tell you what I'll do. And obviously I'm talking about a water heater and probably some water treatment. I'm not talking about getting a crane out and replacing the system up on the roof like you might be talking about. But for me, it was something I could probably do right there on site. And I would say, let me just get this taken care of. If it doesn't do everything that you thought it would do and she doesn't love it, I'll tell you what, I'll call you in 3 days. And if it doesn't fulfill all your needs, I'll come back and yank it out. And I'll give you 100% of your money back. So that's one, which is just the 100% guarantee close. And then the other one would be to say, look, man, I get it. I would hate to make a decision like this without my spouse as well. But let me tell you, man, I'm out working all day. My wife's at home with the kids all day. When I get home late in the evening, to walk into the water heater, running water out down the garage, down the driveway, or in Nate's case, in the basement. And now I have this issue that's been an issue all day, and I have to deal with the decision on top of it, when what could have happened is I could have walked into the house and my wife just said this was completely taken care of for me already. That would have been a weight off my back that I don't want to deal with. For what we're probably talking about is, even if you go find another company that's going to give you the exact same quality product, the exact same quality technician like me, drug tested, background check, fully covered by a warranty by a company that has one of the tightest reputations in the area, for a little bit less money, if it was even possible. You're talking about a few dollars less a month to have to go through this process with a couple other companies. Let me just go ahead and get it taken care of for you right here, right now, and you won't have to worry about it anymore. Does that sound good?
All right, let's do it, Brian. Like, I don't want to go.
And then I would make the jokes too, which is just like, I assure you, the next guy you get out here, next plumber, he ain't gonna be as charismatic as me. You're not gonna have as much fun with him as you're gonna have with me. It's gonna be someone you wish you didn't let into your home.
And I feel like you're going to do a good job. So let's get it done.
All right, buddy. Thank you. Just sign. Sorry.
So,
Endorse.
So Brent, shifting gears here, I appreciate all the tips and guidance there on setting a proper lead. Now let's talk about what that $14.7 million comes from, the actual presentation and conversation in the home. So we've trained our guys, we've worked with the people who are positioning the conversation well and conditioning the homeowner to be prepared to have this conversation. Now, to me, that's a double-edged sword, right? Because, you're going out there and they know why you're coming out there. So guards up, let's duke it out a little bit here. I got a guy coming over here specifically to sell me a unit. While on the flip side, they are at least ready and prepared, and this isn't going to catch them blindsided like, whoa, there's $30,000 I didn't see coming. So talk to us about how you establish yourself in the home when you've been invited in by a technician and the homeowner, and where do you start with your comfort advisor, selling manager? Where does that conversation begin?
Let me stop you right there, Brent.
Yeah.
I don't say this often. Usually the guest does, but great question, Nate. Goodness gracious.
That was really good. Yeah. So,
thanks, Brian.
Transitioning from me coming to the door and the technician sitting there on the couch and having conversations with the customer. The goal is that the customer is asking the technician how much a new unit costs, right? It's their idea to have me there. And that was through asking the right questions, listening, presenting, and letting them, taking them down that path. But at the same time, it's their idea to have me there. So hopefully the guard is down a little bit, and the technician's done a really good job. Let's say he hasn't, or it's been an okay job. When I come in, I'm going to go down and I'm going to say, hey, where's a great place to sit? Where are you guys comfortable? They're going to say the couch. It seems like more the couch these days than the table. It just depends on the customer, but I might sit on the couch next to them and talk to them a little bit about some things I've seen in the house. And then I'll turn to the technician and be like, hey, why don't you fill me in on what's going on and, why I'm here today. And the technician's going to kind of go through his findings. He's going to kind of go and repeat over what he's talked to the customer and get their buy-in to it. And he's going to kind of give me a briefing on, why we're there, why things need to be replaced. And I'll be like, really, let me see that, so I'll get up in the attic.
So a quick time out there, Brent, before
Yeah.
you're getting up in the attic, when you're sitting down there, you said you'll sit next to the client. Is that typical of what you do? And if so, where does the technician sit? Does it matter?
So I always analyze this, and it's become kind of just a natural part, but I will sit as close to the client as I can be comfortably and making them comfortable. Because the closer I am, it seems like the better the interaction is. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay.
So when I see I might walk in and the customer is pacing around the backyard and they're not even at the couch, and I got to kind of reel them in and get them back to the table or the couch, and we get down to business. But I think being non-threatening and just nonchalant and just like you're there to just give them options. I want to hear what the technicians found, even though I have all these answers already. I want to have him repeat it to me in front of the customer. I want to have him show me. So I'll go and look up in the attic. I'll look outside. I'll grab my ladder.
Okay. So sorry, secondary timeout there.
Yeah.
How do you know all this stuff already? Because the technician set the lead and you said, don't move your butt from that couch. So how have you gained this information?
So I've been talking to this technician along the sales process.
Okay.
Yeah, he's been texting me or calling me like, hey, this is going on. This is what they're saying. This is what I have going on here. Let me present this. He'll present it, go back out to the truck or whatever, talk to me. And so I kind of have a pretty good idea of what's going on there already. But I want to hear it from his mouth in front of the client, and so they can hear it again. And then I want him to show me. so I can kind of confirm, hey, this, this ductwork is undersized. It is torn. It's not in great condition. It's restricting airflow. He shows me this. Can you believe this? Can you do that? And the customer is kind of involved in that process,
Okay,
when I
so
get there again.
this is sort of akin to like the dental hygienist handing off to the dentist, right? The dentist has
Right.
already read the chart; he already knows what's going on, but the
Yeah.
hygienist is in there, kind of pointing out, "Oh yeah, this tooth and this tooth and this tooth," and the
Right.
dentist is just nodding along, like, "Yep,
Right. Yep.
okay."
So not
All right, so you're
only,
climbing. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, so that way that all of us are on the same page, right? Like the client knows what needs to be done. I know what needs to be done. The technician knows what needs to be done. So there's no like, he didn't tell me that, at the end, or he didn't say that, or, so it's worked out very well. And the more interaction, also when they're booking the lead, they will get me on the phone and be like, hey, Brent, I got this going on. Blah, blah, blah. Are you available to come out? Yeah, I'm right down the street. I'm not that far. I'll be over there in 20 minutes. So,
Yeah. Okay, and then sorry to answer that question about where the technician sits. So if you're sitting next to the client, is it important where they sit relative to you and the client?
so it depends, it depends. Like if they just have one couch and we're all three sitting on the couch, or if it's at a table, I'll try to be in a position where it's non-threatening,
Yeah.
So I'll sit next to them, maybe a cushion over, or but not like straight onto them, or I might sit at an angle from them at the table. And it's non-threatening. Um, Body language means a whole lot in sales, so the more chill you are and your body language is non-threatening, it's going to make your life a lot easier.
But
Okay,
it doesn't matter where the tech who turned the lead over sits.
No,
Or
but I do.
are you done with him at that point?
No, he's staying there. Yeah,
I
he's
mean,
staying there through the sales
even
process.
okay, through the entire close and everything.
yeah,
Yeah.
because he's the backup plan if they choose to repair, right? So he's always there.
Yes and no, but when it comes down to it, if I'm like presenting options and the customer's kind of hem-hawing around about like doing the repair or not, the technician will be like, yeah, Mr. Jones, it's probably best to just replace it. And he's just remember, they already like him. He's not the sales guy. They like him. They trust him. He's built a relationship with them. I'm just in there to try to sell him a unit, so
Right.
is in their minds. So he's there for support. But typically I don't think, I think the process with some of my guys, the process is so good that from start to finish, we usually will walk out with some of the biggest tickets we can get. Like
Sure.
ductwork, installation, and then also Brian, I was wanting to know if it was okay if my plumber came over and looked at the water heaters and not straps. You said is tomorrow at 9:00 good?
That's perfect.
Okay,
All right, so you're sitting
and
in
it's going to be free. We won't charge you for
Of
that.
course, of course.
Okay.
Oh, all right. Thank you. That was going to be my next question.
So Brent,
Complimentary.
Complimentary. There you go. Nothing's free. My dad always told me that. Nothing's free. I mean,
Yeah.
if I had one, he would have told me that.
Oh boy,
This is
another
America.
episode.
My
there,
dad
Brian.
said, "This is America. Nothing's free."
Yeah, there you go. There's no free lunch.
All right, Brent. So you're sitting in the family room. You're next to the client. You're advocating on their behalf. The technician is kind of parroting what you're saying and reinforcing a lot of the conversation. You're coming to a collective understanding. You're getting up in the attic, getting down in the basement, wherever you need to go to actually like physically examine what's going on. And now you at least have a same pageness with the technician and the client. Like all three of you are on the same page. This is the condition. These are the concerns. Where do we go from there? Do you just say like, hey, you want to replace this or what?
No, I'll say, hey, do you mind if we go back to the couch and we'll kind of sit down and go over some options? And I'll say, look, it's just, buying an air conditioning heating system is just like buying anything. There's low end to high end. And so typically what I'll do is I'll just kind of give you everything I usually start at the best and kind of work my way down. And then you can kind of choose whatever you feel is best for your home. Sound good?
That sounds fine.
Okay. So then we'll go over, I'm a big advocate for inverters, especially in our climate. high efficiency air conditioning units. I have one on my home. I think everybody should have one in the desert. So I translate that pretty heavily in my presentation. And I'll spend, if I'm presenting all the equipment options and stuff like that, I'll probably spend, let's say, 25 minutes. I'll probably spend 15 minutes of that talking about the inverter and some of the higher efficiency options and why it matters for their home and what a difference it would make in their comfort. And then I kind of work my way down to the more basic of the equipment that we have. And I think by the time we get down to the basic, nobody wants that, you know? I think I spend so much time and there's so much convincement of my presentation to them about high efficiency equipment. A lot of people want that. Um,
So why do you start at the top? I mean, obviously they're going to experience some significant sticker shock. When you roll out the platinum package there at $50,000, and they're like, "That's a car payment, Brent."
yeah, I mean, just like everything these days, everything's gone up, right? Can't buy, I always talk about the truck I bought in 2013, an F-250, and it was brand new, and it was 54 grand. And I always say, guess how much that costs now, today? Like
Yeah.
90, 100,000 almost. So, nothing is cheap these days, um, but it's well worth the comfort. And when you look at the other packages we have, it's not that much more money, and you kind of you get a lot more for your bang for your buck.
Yeah, so early in the podcast, you mentioned that you're not selling systems, you're selling comfort. And how do you integrate that philosophy? Do you actually drop that line to the client, or is that just like your motto and then you bring about what that means in the conversation?
Yeah, when I talk about like inverter systems, high efficiency systems, they're a variable speed capacity, and we increase in we do duct replacements, higher insulated ducting because in our climate it's all flex duct for the most part. It's really to improve the quality of comfort in their house and the air distribution, and they kind of get to customize it the way that they want it for their home. So I sell more inverters than anybody probably in the Southwest. Um, and that's because the way that I present it is we just like that, an HVAC system is not just a heating and cooling system. It's something you got to live with for the next 15 or 20 years. And they kind of, when you say that, they kind of like, yeah, this is not like a car that I'm going to replace every 4 or 5 years. This is an HVAC system that you're going to have to live with. So if you want to cut corners or you want to do it with the least efficient option, that's something you're going to have to live with for the next 15 or 20 years. Um, so that's kind of when I'm talking to the customer, it's the way I'm saying it to them, and they understand, like, hey, we're going to live in this house for a while. Why don't we just do the best of the best and have the best comfort? We're going to be paying a lot of money anyways, all around. So
Yeah, so why not? And I assume you bring in quite a bit there about like the family and the home and how much time you spend in the home and all that type of thing.
yeah.
Yeah, and that makes a ton of sense. And as the technician who's sitting there, he's re-emphasizing these things. Have you trained with them as to like, hey, you have no lines in this play after I arrive here, other than to agree and shake your head, or are there specific things you look for them to comment on throughout the presentation?
Um, for the most part, we have an agreement that, they kind of just sit there and kind of just agree with what's going on and what I'm saying. And they're there for backup for the most part. But when there's too many cooks in the kitchen, it can get confusing. And when it gets confusing, people can't make a decision. And so when you if I'm presenting an inverter and all the options, and then they're like, oh well, I like the two-stage unit, and that's a good value because they can see the customer going into a lower expensive option. that's too many cooks in the kitchen, and so now they're confused. Like, should we do the inverter or should we do? The tech was just here saying he has a 2-stage on his house, or should we do the ductwork or should we not? Should we leave it? You know, so it's always great to be on the same. You're synced on the same page with the technician. Where, when I arrive, it's up to me at that point, but they're there to reassure the customer and to finish out the process, if that makes sense.
So what if they have developed such a relationship with that technician? They say, hey, Brian, like, what do you think we should do? What's Brian supposed to say if Brian doesn't have an inverter?
Yeah, Brian's gonna say, the inverter is the best option, and I agree with Brent. I mean, the best comfort you can get is that inverter system.
Okay, yeah. So definitely re-emphasizing with you, and that's why it's so critical that you and the technician are in simpatico in terms of your presentation and what's important, what to say, what not to say.
If they've been on a call with me more than a few times, they already know. They kind of know that the way it's going, and what's great is I've been able to see these guys like develop their own sales process around the same equipment, and take what I said and kind of make it their own a little bit and go far, So it's been exciting to watch.
Well, this has been exciting to listen to, Brent, and we've
for real
this time
got me
quickly.
half wishing I was in HVAC again.
Hey, you got me half wishing
like
I'm so
much fun.
Wishing I was in plumbing and selling you a water softener right now.
Yeah, bro, what happened? We used to be such a good tag team partner. We need to get that back. I need to just come out to Phoenix for a little bit.
It's great, man. So much opportunity in the trades. It's amazing.
It's silly.
So
it really is.
It just, everyone's talking about being so slow and this and that and can't get to sales and stuff. And I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, is this people's water heaters are still going out? Mm-hmm. Their heaters are still failing. Air conditioning is going out. You just gotta, or
even better, they're still concerned with having maintenance done.
Exactly.
And that's all we need.
And I tell my guys when I was at Fetch, the maintenance customers are the best customers you're ever going to see. They're the ones that care about their systems enough to have you come out and look at it preventatively. The rest of these people that are calling when there's a problem, they're just calling you when there's an emergency. They're not as concerned about their equipment as the maintenance customer. So, yeah, it's I truly believe some of the biggest tickets we ever had were on maintenance.
Yeah, and you still see them over and over and over. And you were at the same company long enough to where, and I was managing at the company Nate's at long enough to see that you would get a huge ticket and do everything at a client's house, and then several years later go do it again.
Yeah, I mean, when I was at Yes, I sold 2 or 3 air conditionings on the same house. Just over the amount of years I was there. So,
yeah. The gift that keeps on giving.
Right, trades.
There it is. Well, hey, Brent, if people are interested in learning more about you, your story, the things you're talking about today, where's a good place to find you?
You can, probably the most popular place is on Facebook. Brent Buckley, look me up, Facebook, Champions Groups Holdings, where I work. And, you can, I don't know if Brian can post my email on there. You're welcome to email me anytime too.
Yeah, you can say it. You can say your email.
brntb17@yahoo.com, or you can find me on IG, cooling_Vegas.
Excellent. Well, Brent, this has been good. And one final question for you. Who does the HVAC maintenance at your house?
No one. I do.
Same guy who flushes my water heater.
I just changed the filters. I've been there 7 months, but I just changed them like 2 weeks ago for the first time. So, it's HVAC and plumbers work so much. We don't have time to work on our own stuff,
Yeah, something about cobbler's children and their shoes or something like, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, Brent Buckley, it's been a joy to have you on again. We appreciate you joining us and sharing really good and practical tips, not only for the sales, but really specifically the setting of the sales process. It's been good to have you on, man. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, nice to talk to you, Nate and Brian, and we'll chat to you guys later. Thanks for having me.
I will, dare I say, of your 3 episodes, this was, to me so far, I mean, I'll have to listen to it, and I will definitely listen to this one. But this seemed to be the most impactful, usable episode you've done. And truly, I feel like one of the best, most usable sales techniques episodes we've ever done of this show. I'm very excited for this one to release.
Great. I'm glad to help, and hopefully we can do a 4th episode maybe later on.
Oh, and more and more and more. But I'm even thinking about maybe moving Nate out and getting you in here as a co-host.
Love it.
See you, Nate.
All right. Thanks, buddy.
All right.
Yep. That's a wrap for our podcast. We hope that you enjoyed your time with Brent. I know I did. Such good practical advice there, and really needed in the HVAC industry in such a time as this, where things aren't quite as easily as they used to be, right? And so it's always good to hear from him as a man who has done it on both sides of the equation and more. And so hope that you enjoyed it. Make sure that you hit him up. He provided his contact information there, and find him there. Let him know what you thought about the show. Let him know that you want to hear him again. Let us know what you thought about the show as well. We'd love to hear it, because we're always looking for your feedback. We're going to leave you now with our weekly challenge, which remains the same: to choose to wake up every single morning and waste no day.